Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Saturday speaker meeting. Thank you so much for attending today. I'm Kurt Buskey, Executive Director of the San Diego Brain Injury Foundation. And today I am excited about our topic. Today we have Briana, and our speaker, of course. Today we have Briana Lefman, who's a licensed counselor and founder of Hamsa Healing Space. Today's topic is employment after brain injury. Briana will be talking about different considerations, challenges, and solutions in regards to this. And so with no further ado, I'd like to provide a warm welcome to Briana. Thank you so much for spending some time on your Saturday here with us to share some information and some things that you've experienced. And I know that, really, things like job clubs and working after brain injury are really kind of close to your heart. We've talked a lot over the course of the last couple of years about this type of thing. So please, everybody, provide a warm welcome to Briana. Thank you, Briana, for joining us. We appreciate you. And so with no further ado, let's get going with this.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here. It's so nice to be with all of you. This is very, very near and dear to my heart for many, many reasons. I am really excited about this topic because today we're going to be talking about how you can feel autonomous, how you can learn to use the skills that you have to begin to feel more independent and get excited again about using different skills that maybe you're rediscovering or discovering now. We're here to support you. That's why we're doing this today. That's it. So you know all of your options. So Kurt, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the presentation and share the screen now. Are you ready?
Good. Sounds good.
So I just have to think. There we go. Okay. So the first slide we're going to talk about is preparing for returning to work and gaining employment. And that's a huge topic that can feel so overwhelming. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make it really, really manageable. And we're going to take it into tiny little chunks so that we can take it minute by minute instead of day by day. That's too much time. So the first question I'm going to ask everybody is, how do we know when we are ready to consider looking for a job? So we're going to start there. So some things to consider are, what factors should we consider? What's important for us to consider to succeed in our home environment so that we're ready to start looking for work? What's important for us to succeed in the work environment? How do we find help? And what are our responsibilities? What do we need to be mindful of? So we're going to go ahead and begin to talk about these concepts. Let's start slowly. Let me go ahead and move this so I can see all of you. We need to first begin the process of acceptance. That means that we have to just put on our radar, accepting that our brains are a little bit different now. They are not the way they were before our acquired possible brain injury or impairment or deficits, meaning we might have to relearn some tasks or skills, or we might have to develop new ways of completing or performing strategies or tasks. So we're becoming best friends with our brains and we're figuring out new strategies. So the question is, what are some of the changes that you have all experienced as a result of acquiring a TBI or a brain injury? Yeah, raise of hands or put in the chat. Can anyone else relate to that? You have difficulty multitasking now. Yeah, that sounds very logical and reasonable. Our brains have changed. We're going to have difficulty with multitasking. So right now in this very moment, you might be trying to listen to me and read something in the chat and try to write and try to think. That's several tasks that your brain is trying to operate at once. it is very difficult to have memory recall after certain parts of our brains were deeply impacted. And there's different types of brain injuries. Some of us may have experienced parts of our brains in which there was oxygen cut off, and therefore certain parts of those lobes in the brain don't work the way they used to. So if we're trying to think about in a job environment, multitasking, or trying to remember either basic operations or really complicated ones, that's going to feel overwhelming. It's just a lifelong adjusting process and figuring out from hour to hour, day to day, well, today my brain's not working on this, or maybe my vision's been impaired, or my mobility has been impaired, or my memory's not working the way it used to.
You know, the really, you know, I think that the way that hits me is, you know, really an awareness, right? Because it's easy to get frustrated by like, you know, I'm just get tired too quickly, or I can't focus for very long, or, you know, by noon, there's just no way I can really, you know, focus enough, you know, to really do work. And so, you know, it hits me as, you know, like it's important to be aware, right? Of your capabilities and these types of things. And then really looking, you know, if you want to work or volunteer, really looking for opportunities that are flexible enough where, you know, your situation will be able to be accommodated by that type of work or volunteering, right?
So Kurt just started the topic that we're going into, awareness and acceptance. Before, tasks that our brain maybe could have been able to perform easier, maybe retrieving words, thinking about words, having memory recall, meaning short-term and long-term memory, concentration, focus, completing tasks, organizing, sequencing of thoughts and numbers, information synthesis, meaning our brain was able to hear someone speak or read words, and we could not only understand, but we could retain it. Maybe before, our body moved the way our brain wanted it to. When we told our right arm or hand or leg, I want you to move, our brain sent a signal properly. But now, maybe it's different. Before, we might have had balance. We might have had steady mobility and gait. Maybe we were able to move quickly. Before, maybe our speech felt more clear or easier. Maybe writing and typing was easier. Maybe it was faster. Now, after acquiring a brain injury, our brain might experience things differently. Maybe retrieving words is harder. Maybe it takes longer. Maybe we can't remember words or people, places, or things. Concentration might be really difficult. It might require us to stop and complete one task at a time. We might need to write things down now. We might need to start focusing differently because more than one task at a time feels like it's too much information for our brain. We need to begin to learn how to practice awareness of when we're having difficulty and accepting that we might need help. And that means learning how to ask for help. And for some of us, that might feel so exhausting and frustrating. And we'll talk about that. Now we might need to write down lists for trying to organize or retain information in our brain. We might also have to practice repetition. We might need to write things down over and over or say things over and over. We might need physical therapy. We might need rehabilitation therapy. We might need assistive devices. We might need speech therapy. So we're all in different stages in our recovery, and recovery is a lifelong process. So it never really ends, kind of like how Jerry was talking about. So I want to first talk about these assistive devices, and we're going to get into that in a moment, but that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
These devices can be so helpful for us in our day-to-day interactions, whether it means we're at home trying to figure out something small, or we're at a grocery store trying to figure out how much we owe or how much change, or whether we're working at a grocery store. So these devices are intended to take some of the mental exhaustion off of our brains. So we're actually going to talk about those assistive devices. So we're going to talk about how we begin to prepare. We're going to practice at home before we even apply for work. That means mastering adult daily living tasks at home on a consistent basis. So let's talk about what that even means. What does that include? So adult daily living are those tasks that mean we're taking care of our bodies and our minds as best we can as people who are beginning to try and figure out our acclimating at home. So that means creating a consistent routine in which we have access to food and are feeding ourselves, making sure that we're eating several times per day, getting enough nutrients, making sure that we have a practice of daily hygiene, whether that means brushing our teeth twice a day and showering once a day, or taking a bath, whether that means having our caregivers help us eat and bathe or shower. And also, this is going to be a big one, sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene refers to developing a routine on a nightly basis in which we create the ideal environment for ideal relaxation, meaning we've gotten our brains to quiet down a little bit. We've gotten our bodies to get a little bit more relaxed from maybe our brain being on overdrive during the day. Someone earlier before the presentation started talked about how they use birds, a YouTube clip where birds are kind of humming and singing as a relaxation way to fall asleep. And that would be a great example of thinking about what are different parts that I need in order to create a routine. And when we get prepared for sleep, we need to think about, do I need to sleep with dark? Do I need to sleep with lights? Do I need to sleep with music? Do I need to sleep with sound? Some people prefer white noise, and that means kind of like a low humming frequency that just kind of drowns out maybe traffic or television, something that might be distracting to your brain that's already tired from the day. And also practicing and developing a schedule and routine of time management. When we're at home, we have to begin to practice time schedules. So that means waking up at a consistent time in the morning, and then throughout the day, figuring out a schedule that would involve completing certain tasks. Maybe it means taking out the trash on certain days. Maybe it means getting the mail at the same time every day. Maybe it means watching a webinar on brain injury rehabilitation. But we want to begin to use skills that would require us outside of the home. So what I usually encourage people to do is think about, do you need to look at a calendar? Do you want to use a day planner? What will be helpful for you to maintain time management? So when we think about maintaining responsibilities at home, we want to think about what that even means. So maintaining responsibilities at home, that includes any of the following, and this is not a full list. We have to remember to practice turning off lights. We have to remember to practice turning off electronics and home appliances after we use them. We have to remember to turn water off after we use it. We have to remember to maintain clean and organized living spaces. We have to remember to take our medication if we're on medicine. Remembering to set alarms and using our calendars and our day planners. And remembering to practice writing down our appointments, whether that's a doctor's appointment, whether it's a meeting like this, and then attending. So the more that we notice we're not missing important things, the more we feel like we begin to feel more confident and ready to start considering the idea of volunteering for work. I didn't put a comprehensive list. So one of the examples is home appliances. And I'm so glad that you brought this up. I actually recently talked about with someone. You can set an alarm on your calendar in which you receive an alert and a reminder saying, check the stove, check the water faucet, check the oven. And that means several times per day, we check and make sure, did I turn that off? Because our brains are so good at convincing us maybe we did turn something off and we did it. And then other times we trick ourselves like, oh, I don't think I turned it off when we did. Mm-hmm. It's so overwhelming. Just the idea of, first we have to prepare, how do we get out of the house? And there's so many tasks involved with just getting dressed, brushing our teeth, washing our face. How do we get there? What do we need? There's so many mental operations. And then how do we get there? And then, navigating people, and then all of the choices. And there's so many different stimulations.
One of the things, and thank you for that, Jacob, one of the things that occurs to me as you're saying these things is that you're mentioning things that, were so natural before and stuff that you didn't really need to think about so much. And it occurs to me that, oftentimes, after a brain injury, when we're looking at things like getting back to work, or even, something like going to the grocery store, we may need to be more conscious about, developing a game plan and really preparing for these things than we had to before. But if we just, I think a mistake some people may make is just, not really anticipating, not planning, and just going about these things the same way that they always did may kind of set you up in some senses for some frustration.
So the next slide is what we need to be comfortable with before considering volunteering or working. So here's where we're going to talk about assistive devices. So we need to first secure assistive devices, and we have to first practice becoming comfortable using them at home. So before we even go out into this big, loud, stimulating world full of all types of factors that we have no control over, let's get comfortable with these devices that we do have control over. And let's learn how to use these devices so that they help us receive what we need from others and the environment around us. So those assistive devices, anything, can include some of the things that some of you have mentioned already and probably use. Some you might be exploring and looking into, and some you might have been using for years already, even prior to acquiring any type of cognitive change. Many of us use assistive devices. They're designed to help life be a little bit more manageable. So for example, there are voice dictation devices, and those are things that either make our voice sound stronger or our words sound more clear. And they also allow us to record certain things and listen back, as well as play it for someone else. So if I have a caregiver helping me, whether it's a friend, a family member, or caregiver that I've hired, they can actually do things with these devices in which I can carry around with me. So if I'm at a volunteer position and at 3 p.m., I have to take my medicine, and an alarm goes off on my phone and I see that it says, listen to my voice dictator, I can actually play it, and it will actually have my caregiver's voice reminding me, it's 3 p.m., take your medication. I can also use the voice dictation device for when I'm learning tasks. So maybe if I'm volunteering or I'm at a job and the person supervising me says, every day at 12 o'clock is when you're supposed to go and take your lunch. Well, I want to have that reminder for myself because I might be struggling with time management. So I might use my voice dictation device and record myself saying that, because sometimes hearing my own voice, it's comforting and it's familiar. And when our brain hears certain familiar sounds or tones, it can actually recall easier. Sometimes when our brain hears different voices, it doesn't recognize that sound, and it kind of takes that sound and goes, I don't want to remember that. It doesn't sound familiar, and it'll dump it. So that's another strategy. Another example of assistive devices are screen readers with magnifiers. Some of our sites have been impacted. So our visual, whether it's we lost sight, whether our site was impacted, whether one of our sites has gone maybe a very significant reduction, we can use things like screen readers. And there are screen readers that are built into devices, and there's also external screen readers. And what screen readers do is they have different functions. Some of them allow us to magnify or make fonts or words larger, but they also have audio functions that can read aloud words for us, so that if our vision is impaired, we can hear the words being read to us, and that can also help with processing and retaining. Now, what we can do when we hear the word back to us is we can write the word down. So now what our brain is doing is it's operating 3 tasks. Now, the great part about screen readers that I love is we can press repeat over and over and over again. So if it takes me 1 hour to remember one task, I'm going to press repeat over and over until it gets in my brain and says, okay, I've got it. 3 p.m., that's when I take my medicine. That's what the screen is saying, okay? Another example is of assistive technology devices is something called a body support device. These are really helpful. And these are designed for all different types of volunteer and work environments. So these are devices that we can use at home to practice. And those include anything from scooters to walkers. We might use canes, we might use wheelchairs, we might use crutches. And there's something called gait trainers. So I'm going to go over these devices and how they help us prepare for work. Some of us might get volunteer positions in which we need to either walk, we need to sit, we need to stand, we need to move, we need to lift. Well, before we can even practice getting to the place we volunteer or work at, we want to get comfortable moving our bodies in our own home environments, in our rooms. So if I need to go to another room, the first thing we want to think about is our home environment designed to help us move around? So maybe we want to consider whether we're in a first level home or an apartment. Do I have stairs? Do I have ramps? There are a lot of different environmental factors that are going to impact how we use mobility aids. And we'll talk about where do we go for those, okay? If we use service animals, we better get comfortable working with those service animals. So we want to think about in our home environments, if I'm going to be taking my service animal with me, does the service animal, is it familiar with my voice? Does it know enough tasks? Does it understand if I need the stapler, can it go to the table and get the stapler for me and bring it back? Because if I'm volunteering or working and I have to staple some paper, I can't go all the way across the conference room all the time. So our service animals are designed to help make tasks easier, but also shorten the length of time that our brain has to operate, because in the end, it will become tired. Another example of creating use with assistive devices at home is being comfortable utilizing assisted automobiles or public transport. So remember, we don't want to sign up for a volunteer or work position until we've become more comfortable with whether we have an automobile that's been designed specifically for our bodies, or mobility changes, or vision impairments, or sound auditory changes. We also need to look at public transportation. How do we even start with that? Do we look up bus schedules? Do we look up private ride shares? Do we have caregivers to help us with this? So even in just this screen, we can all see there's a lot of preparation before we even get out of the house. It feels overwhelming initially. And with that being said, there are a lot of systems that are designed to help make these transport accessing systems easier and less overwhelming. I think it's helpful to have that reassurance. The next slide we're going to talk about is returning to work. We're going to talk about challenges and what to expect. I apologize just a second, because we're going to talk about volunteering in a little bit. So first, what we want to do is mentally prepare for what that even would look like. So what we want to do is figure out, what do we hope for from others? How do we want our peers or our coworkers or colleagues or supervisors and employers to see us? So that's a question that we're going to spend time on in a moment. I want all of you to really kind of reflect on that. What are you hoping for others to see in you? What do you want them to understand about you? Meaning, do you want them to see you as someone who might not know how to ask for help? Do you want them to see you as someone who has a low, what I refer to as distress tolerance? In here, it says frustration tolerance. So that means distress tolerance means we might become impatient or feel restless and grow irritated and frustrated with ourselves or with others or with some type of assistive device or a task. Do we want them to know about what skills and talents we have and what we feel proud of? Do we want them to know what preferences we have? So I want to open this discussion up for a moment and ask all of you to think about, how do you want others to see you and what do you want them to understand about you? Because then we're going to talk about, how do we communicate with our employer or mentor or supervisor? What do we want to share? I'm going to ask all of you to think about that. How do you want others to see you? And what skills or qualities or traits are you starting to discover about yourself that you want to teach others about you so they can best support you and understand you? Giving yourself that acknowledgement and reassurance and feeling confident in your abilities and your skills and saying, hey, let me teach everybody what I have going on that I'm doing well.
You know, that understanding would help you and them work together without unnecessary stress, particularly in regards to the idea that, you know, your employer or where you're volunteering, there may be this huge misunderstanding about, you know, concussion or brain injury and what you're capable of and, you know, what you can be capable of with simple accommodations as well. So I think that's a great comment.
This question really is kind of an abstract, introspective question that can be a little bit hard to grasp, because what I'm asking all of us to do is think about, first, how do we see ourselves and what do we believe in ourselves? And then how do we convince others and teach them, you're going to see me that way because that's how I want you to see me. So there's a lot of operations in this part of the brain. And you made so much sense when you said this is hard to explain and understand anyways, and it's so misunderstood. And so I really appreciate what Miles said to you. Miles was saying, you get to decide and you get to define what you want people to understand about you, because it allows you to empower yourself, because you get to teach others. You're the person who educates others about you.
I think that another comment there is pretty related to what we're saying here, which is, you know, I feel like I'm in a tricky place where I don't want people to treat me differently and like I have a disability. However, I really would like people to be more patient. And that absolutely makes sense. And I think it's really related to what Judy has said.
You know, decades ago, there was this movement called ableism. And Miles is referring to what this is. It's this concept that people who don't have any type of quote unquote disability or impairment cannot relate and they don't have it on their awareness or radar to even consider doing things a different way. And Miles emphasized something that I want to share with all of you. We are teachers for others, and we didn't ask for this job. We didn't want this job. We just had to figure out a way to live differently. And I want to present just a replacement phrase for all of you. I'm not really necessarily comfortable, and it's a personal preference whether we use the word disability. I usually encourage the people I work with to say we have different abilities, and that allows us to teach other people that their brain isn't better than ours, their brain is different than ours, and we just operate differently. Our brains are designed to now do things differently and still receive and accomplish the same results. We just might take a little bit longer, or we might take a different route. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. So now we're going to talk about what we actually do. How do we communicate with our employers, and what do we share? Navigating our environments requires us to teach others how to treat us. So what that means is, if we do need accommodations like an assistive keyboard or a grasp reacher or a blue light screen on our computers or tablets, we have not only the option to ask to speak with human resources in different places, but we also have the ability to have conversations with our employers and supervisors and say, my brain is really wonderful and I can do just the same task. I just have to do it a different way. And when we have these conversations, the purpose is to teach others what we need in order to succeed in that environment. That way, we're managing their expectations and letting them know, don't expect me to have that task done in 5 minutes. At home, that takes me 15 minutes. And that's perfectly acceptable. We just have to make sure we're simply communicating. That's it. So I'm going to go to the next slide. We're going to talk about volunteering work versus employment. So I'm going to first talk about where we even start with volunteering. So earlier we heard Judy talk about how she volunteers. Well, not every volunteer opportunity is going to be appropriate for us. We have different desires and passions and interests and hobbies. I might want to volunteer with animals, while another person might want to volunteer working alone behind closed doors, either with technology or maybe stocking shelves. There are all different types of environments, but before we start taking on the commitment of long days and long hours, we have to first practice training our bodies and our brains. And I call that mental and physical endurance and stamina. And that means training our brains to understand and identify how long can we practice a task, how long can we stand, how long can we sit, how long can we use certain skills. So I gave an example of a website that I often refer people to find volunteer options. And the reason why I like that website, volunteermatch.org, is because it has all different types of categories, and it also allows you to choose different ones that offer accommodations. And there's lots of different types of adjustments. So when you are exploring different volunteer options, we want to consider what we're comfortable with, not just what we're familiar with. So when we're considering what we're comfortable with, that means thinking about skills we've practiced at home that we feel we've mastered and we've become confident in, versus considering our skills means I might be comfortable using my right hand for 30 minutes, but my skill is actually writing with my left hand. So we want to really figure out, if I'm volunteering for something, what types of volunteer opportunities are going to allow me to practice those skills more, in order, if the goal is to get a paid job, then you want to consider a volunteer environment that allows you to practice those skills. And we're going to talk about that in more a minute. It also allows us to explore interests. Maybe we have to rediscover what our hobbies are. Maybe we have to rediscover what our interests are. And we might also have to discover what aptitudes or what skills do we feel proud of. Remember, a lot of us have talked about how we are trying to figure out how we want people to see us. Well, we might not know how we want people to see us if we don't know how we see ourselves yet, and what we feel confident in and what we feel proud of. And when we gain volunteer opportunities, that's also kind of a building block for us, where we can actually receive letters of support and recommendation that we can actually take to future supervisors and employers. This is usually the place that I start with people that I work with, is rather than placing extra pressure on ourselves or our loved ones or friends or peers who have experienced cognitive changes, to try and put pressure on ourselves of, get dressed professionally and show up on time and risk, losing a job. Why don't we practice first with our new different abilities and figuring out how long it takes us to master feeling comfortable and confident in different skills. And what I love about volunteering is it's an endless, lifelong opportunity to discover interests and passions and hobbies. And we can practice in different environments, and we can meet so many new different people with different experiences and gain skills that way. So the next slide we're going to talk about, since we talked about volunteer options, now we're going to talk about gainful employment. So this is typically a step that we would take. I usually encourage people to take after volunteering, so that you've been able to establish practicing different skills and learning about what you like and what you don't like, and what you feel confident in and what you don't feel confident in. Some resources to search and secure gainful employment is Department of Rehabilitation is an organization that I work closely with and refer to, and they assign case managers to you that will help you not only explore your talents and hobbies and skills, but also assist you with matching to different work environments that will not only accommodate certain needs that you might have, but also helping you tailor certain job positions. So in Department of Rehabilitation, what I appreciate about them is their case managers allow you to explore your different interests. They also help you develop resumes and cover letters, and they teach you how to tailor your resume and cover letters by teaching you different skills when you're applying for jobs, looking for keywords. So there's a website called onetonline.org, and there's that website helps you look at different categories based on your hobbies. And there's also a free, very short career assessment that will allow you to get familiar with different skills that you either enjoy or are interested in becoming more confident in. And it will match you to different types of jobs that you can consider applying for. Workforce.org is a search engine that has different categories based on different work experience or volunteer experience that you've had. And if you're in San Diego, the San Diego Workforce actually has a section in their services agency. And it actually talks about job shadowing and apprenticeships. And apprenticeships are great opportunities to what I refer to as kind of narrow in on our skills, and also it can allow us to job shadow. And that means we don't have to put pressure on ourselves to check off boxes and complete tasks well. It allows us to shadow and make mistakes and feel completely comfortable and say, oh, I made a mistake. I'm learning why this task might not work for me well that way. What I'm excited about to hear about in San Diego Brain Injury Foundation is because there's going to be a job club. I'm assuming that Kurt is going to expand more about this, but I'm assuming that the job club at San Diego Brain Injury Foundation is going to assist with all of this, exploring interests, developing resumes and cover letters, searching for jobs, mock interviews, which means practicing interview skills, preparing for the actual getting there on time, how to answer questions, how to answer emails or texts and phone calls after a follow-up. Kurt, I come over to you. Is there anything that you want to expand on?
Yes, all of that, and something important, peer support, right? And so that's part of the wonderful nature of a job club as well, is the opportunity to really support each other in this endeavor.
Literally, all human beings need support, and it's important that we can have someone or many or a community to turn to and say, I have no idea how to apply for Social Security. I don't know how to apply for short-term disability. How do I ask for accommodations? Where do I start? Some of us had to declare that we were unable to work. And there is a caveat to this. And I love that many of us think about these things. First of all, let me emphasize this. Every single person I work with has this exact question. This is a really common concern, and it's a really valid concern. These policies are not designed for most people to understand. I know personally I don't. I'm not an attorney. I'm a human being with a brain that has a different ability. And when I read these policies, they feel overwhelming and confusing. What I did learn is that there are different rules. There are different sets of hours, and there are exceptions. So there used to be policies that would say, if you are receiving Social Security disability income, you cannot work at all. And that's not the case anymore. That's not accurate, and that doesn't hold true any longer. There are actually many, many, many policies that want to encourage people that are differently abled to volunteer and or have a job. I don't want to step on any toes. So I'm going to ask you, Kurt, do you want me to spend time on this, or do you want to speak about this, or is that something different?
No, you could spend a little time on this. Just let's pay attention to the time. And I think we have about 25 minutes left or so. We can go a little over time, but yeah, feel free to make a couple of comments about that, because I know this is the question that everybody has for sure.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that all of you here, Kurt and I hear this all the time, and this is a valid concern. I will tell you this. I'm not an attorney, and so I don't know the laws. What I can say is that I work with different people who have discovered that when they apply for disability income, that there are a certain amount of hours that we can still work as long as we don't exceed a certain amount of hours. And I don't want to give you those numbers because I know they change, and I also know that they can change. So usually what I tell my clients is, when you apply for this assistance, they will give you something in writing with those numbers, and it will say you are allowed to work, I'm giving an example, 20 hours per week. And if you exceed that amount, then the amount of Social Security income that you receive will decrease. So it's kind of a balancing act, because what I usually tell my clients is, well, now we have to consider, let's get our calculator out. Am I going to make more at my employer where I'm getting paid for this job? Or will it make more sense for me to only work, for example, 15 to 20 hours and receive the income from the Social Security disability check, because this is something that's going to allow us to consider a number of factors. Remember, this whole presentation is talking about physical, mental, cognitive, stamina, and endurance. So we don't want to push ourselves to work too much if we're still in our rehabilitation recovery process, and or we're going to put ourselves in a position in which we might not actually be receiving income that could come from the disability resource. So I hate giving that great answer because it doesn't give us what we need. Because they don't give us a direct answer. What they say to us is, well, that will depend on how many hours you work and how much you receive per hour in that job. So it's very individualized and independent. So I'm going to go over what a vocational assessment is so everybody just understands what to expect, because the Job Club at the San Diego Brain Injury Foundation is going to be the most amazing resource. This is something that I provide to my individual clients, and now I can send them to the Job Club at the Brain Injury Foundation. So it helps you explore your interests, like your hobbies, and it helps you discover what interests you have. It also helps you determine whether you want to work with others or alone, whether you want to work with technology, whether you want to work with mobility, your hands, your limbs, whether you want to work with animals. What it also helps determine is your aptitudes. That means what transferable skills do you want to capitalize on? So we heard Judy talk about transferable skills. So maybe my personal skill is I'm really great at typing fast. Maybe that's an example. And I want to transfer that into my professional skills. So we can learn to, in our vocational assessments, we'll also be able to determine based on the results of the assessment, whether or not we need to ask for accommodations such as breaks or adjusted schedules. So maybe we're not a morning person. Maybe we need to work 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Maybe we need to change or adjust some of the job tasks. Maybe we need to ask for reserved parking. And that might also prompt us to look into whether or not do we want to walk? Do we want to drive there? Do we need to use our motorized scooter? Do we need to use public transport? Do we have an automobile that has a ramp that we can use for our wheelchairs if we use one? And also it helps us determine whether or not we need to expand accessibility in the work area. And that helps us understand, is the work environment that we're considering something that's going to be supportive of my different abilities now? I'm going to go to the next screen. Psychological considerations is huge. All of us know that our brains are changed. All of us know that our brains operate differently. One of the most important parts that I work with in my practice is helping people emotionally and psychologically understand themselves better. It's not about teaching others about what they can do for them. It's about teaching others how to support us. So we need to first develop an understanding of what is my stamina? Am I really able to just tolerate being around people for more than 15 minutes, or did they just drive me bonkers and up a wall? Is my physical stamina able to endure more than 15 minutes? I need to learn how to manage the expectations of myself before I can adjust expectations of others. I also might need to learn how to ask for help. Maybe before my cognitive change, maybe I was really independent and I hated asking for help. Well, I'm still me. So maybe it's hard for me to ask for help. So I might need to work on that with my therapist. I might need to learn how to lean on people and learn how to be dependent in my emotional component. Maybe I'm perfectly fine completing tasks, but maybe sometimes I need to say, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Can I share with you what that experience is like today from my 1-hour job? And this is also really helping us understand what else is important for us. It's not about other people. It's helping us understand what is it that I want other people to understand about me and how I operate. And it's helping empower, and you have governing over yourself. So we're going to talk about the types of support that's available to us. Like myself, there's licensed psychotherapists. There's no difference between a psychotherapist and someone who is a counselor. There's different types of services. So people usually ask that. There's coaches. Coaches are a great option for people who have, they want help in learning, for example, skills associated with organization or remembering. So they can teach strategies, and you can meet with them, and you can call them, and you can text them. There's mentors available. These are people who have either peer supports who have become kind of taken on that role as a mentor. But peer supports typically have mentorship roles available. And these are people who have either gone through a recovery rehabilitation process in which they feel confident enough to serve as a mentor to people who might be earlier in their recovery. There's vocational counselors. That's something in which we are allowed to disseminate assessments and also help you determine what you're best suited for based on what skills and talents you have. There's job clubs, which you're going to now have at San Diego Brain Injury Foundation. In job clubs, a lot of these types of vocational options are going to be accessible to you. Case managers are a huge part of the support system. They kind of wear different hats. There's also something called insurance case managers. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to talk to you about all of this for a moment. So insurance case managers is kind of a secret, hidden caveat that a lot of people don't know about. And I love sharing this resource. I get so excited because it's kind of one of those hidden gems. In different ability work, we work to teach you how to advocate for yourselves. And one of those ways in which you can advocate for yourself is when you contact either your health insurance company, or whether it's through Social Security disability, or whether it's through the Social Security Administration, Medi-Cal, or Medicare. These are very, very large bureaucratic agencies. And bureaucratic simply means you're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops, and there's going to be a lot of sticky tape, and you're going to have to check off boxes, and you're going to have to give me paperwork, and half of it is not going to make sense, and you're going to feel overwhelmed. And at the end of the day, you might feel helpless. Well, most of us cannot emotionally handle this stuff because it's so frustrating and confusing. So many of these organizations do have case managers available, but they don't make this public. So what I usually encourage people to do is say the following statement. I'm going to give you the language and terminology. I have a brain that operates differently. Sometimes I need assistance. I'm requesting to be assigned a case manager that will individually work with me. Now, when you ask for assistance, sometimes you might get what I refer to as pushback. And these are usually people who are either on a chat or a phone or possibly in person who might not know that there are case managers available. So sometimes you have to ask for either a supervisor or a manager, and you can say, it might sound like it doesn't exist, but I've been informed that there are people who can further help me because I need individual assistance. I want to take a step back and say something to all of you. Human beings who don't even experience any type of cognitive change or impairment should have individualized case managers with all of these types of organizations. These organizations are not designed for any human being to understand. I want to make sure I emphasize that and normalize that. When we call these companies, they feel like they are set up as confusing mazes that don't make any sense, because they really don't make any sense. And they're built on policies that are not designed to actually be applicable to most of our real lives. And I'll give some concrete examples. If we have an appointment at 2 p.m. and I call the Social Security Administration at 12 p.m., a reasonable assumption is by 12:45, I'll be finished with the call. But as most of us know, I might still be on hold at 1 o'clock. And I might need to get to a bus in 10 minutes. These companies are not designed to be fast. They're not designed to be very easy to navigate. So, case managers are people who literally do this for a living and will sit with you and will make the phone calls and will help you print out paperwork, will help you fill out the paperwork, will help you gather documents, will help you call the banks and different companies to get those documents signed. So all of those overwhelming tasks that none of us can do on our own, we typically need a team to help us. So I want to first make sure all of you know to ask for that assistance. I'm very logistical and concrete, and I make things very tangible with my clients. So here's what I say to navigate these very large systems. I usually will meet with my client one-on-one online, and I will say the following. We're going to write down step by step exactly what you need to do and say. So we're going to first create a list. And then what we do is I'm going to give them the language, what to say. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a second appointment, and I'm going to bring in a member of my client's support team or support system, and I'm going to go over that list with them. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down those tasks with the family member or support system member, and I'll say, if there's any paperwork involved, can you be responsible for helping print out the paperwork or fill out the paperwork or drive to go to the bank to get the paperwork? So it's actually a very interdisciplinary kind of process. So, and I want to validate how frustrating and insulting it feels to live with this and go years and decades without never hearing this and never knowing this. The reason why is I'm going to be very direct with you. Most of us that have lived experience accidentally found these things out by happenstance. These are not things that are commonly known. These are not things that general people know about. And what's frustrating is those of us that specialize in these areas, most of us have lived experience. And so we understand how to navigate these very specific step-by-step tasks. So in my one-on-one sessions, we will actually sit down and we will take the entire hour to write down step 1, open up Google. Step 2, search for the term. Step 3, look up the phone number. Step 4, dial the phone number. Step 5, call. And we will go through verbatim what we need to say and how to request it. But in the agencies, case managers' systems are overloaded. So case managers, when they are limited, they're unable and they're unequipped to provide help with all of these tasks. So typically what we require is an outside support system to help with these things. And so what I usually encourage people to do is hire someone who acts as kind of a personal attendant and or aide. And that can also be someone who helps us with these types of tasks. And we can easily, especially as a therapist, I can help train those assistants to teach their awareness and what types of skills you might need help with. And that's where all of you come in. you're teaching other people what you need help with so they can best support you. This will take about 5 seconds. So I'm just going to share with all of you an additional resource. For those of you who are caregivers in this group who are attending today, I run a support group for family members and or caregivers of people who are caring for or assisting individuals who have experienced cognitive changes or cognitive impairment. So that includes anything from akathisia, dementia, Huntington's disease, aphasia, strokes, degenerative brain injuries. And you can contact me, and Kurt has my information about that support group. Now, this group is specifically designed to talk about these things in this group. So what I do in this group is, it's actually had a lot of people who actually have traumatic brain injuries. They come to the groups also, and here's why. You're the best teachers. You're the people who need to teach your support system what you need, what you want, and who you are. If you don't want people treating you like you are not intelligent, you better make sure they know you're highly intelligent. So this group is designed to empower you. And I do a lot of teaching in that group to the support systems about that concept of letting them know, hey, listen, they're just as intelligent. Their brains just operating differently. So don't assume that they're going to want your help. Ask them. So it's really about focusing on teaching others how to empower you to not only believe in yourself, but to know you are the person running your show. You're the person in charge of navigating your life. The rest of us are here to listen and learn.
So I just want to take a moment to a little round of appreciation and applause for spending some time with us on a Saturday and sharing your expertise with us. Just a wonderful job. Thank you so much.